Welcome to the DSEF. The Direct Selling Executives Forum was created to be a place where real direct selling executives and vendors in the space can come out and share solutions to challenges that face us all in the marketplace. Our guest today is going to be unpacking a topic and sharing their raw thoughts for you to learn from. All right, let's go meet our guest. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Direct Selling Executives Forum next session on expanding influence. And today is a special treat. In a moment, Omar Qureshi, our host, is going to be bringing out Danny Lee. For those of you that don't know, not only runs the company For Life in the space, but has been voted to be our chair of the Direct Selling Association here in the USA. And for those of you who may are like, who's Danny? Haven't met Danny before, or maybe you haven't connected with him at some of the events, I'm going to just share a brief background. Danny graduated magna cum laude from University of Utah with dual degrees in both accounting and finance. He moved to Silicon Valley and served at Arthur Andersen Business Consulting, returned to Utah for a job at Overstock.com. There he served as Vice President of Finance and Controller, and then Senior Vice President of Operations. If you guys know anything about Overstock, that's a lot of operations. In 2008, he joined For Life as Chief Operations Officer, and then in 2016 became Chief Marketing Officer, and then in 2017 was appointed to President and CEO. He now serves the USA DSA as chairman. Danny has his wife, Tara, and they have 5 children. Danny, thank you so much for joining us here today. It's a total treat to connect.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, Ben. You've done some good research there. A little walk down memory lane for me. But it's good to be a guest on your podcast. Look forward to the conversation.
And it's going to be a good one. And man, I know we're talking about influences here. We could have had you handle like 6 of the topics that are in the queue from the forum. Like with your Overstock background, you'd be amazed at how many ops people would have been like, oh man, can you unpack for us, what you learned there and how that's changed? Because that was a wild time of when you were there, just for how the world and technology and just the economics of it all were changing. That was not a simple time when you were over there.
It was wild. In fact,
yeah.
When I was out in Silicon Valley with Anderson, that was the dot-com bubble, and all kinds of crazy valuations, and the NASDAQ up over 5,000 points way back then, and just money flying everywhere, and it was crazy. You couldn't even just afford a place to live. But at the time, but it was crowded, it was exciting, so many smart, brilliant people out there, great things happening, and great companies came from that era. But I left and came back home to Utah, but was with another .com, with Overstock.com, and was able to be with them as we went public and raised hundreds of millions of dollars to get that venture going. And at the time, we at least felt like we were competing with Amazon, and it was exciting times. But yeah, I did learn a lot. I love that space, and kind of always thought I'd remain in that space. But next thing you know, I ended up in direct selling, and here I've stayed for 16 years now.
Amazing. With that, there's been a whole series of questions we've had from the executive panel itself. And so with that, let's go ahead and start the episode. So Omar, the floor is yours. Let's kick it off.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Danny, and welcome to our DSEF podcast today. The first question from the panel is, as you chair, of the DSA and president and the CEO of For Life, you've had quite the journey. For those that do not know your story, why did you agree to serve as DSA chair?
It's interesting. You don't agree up front on this. It's kind of like they set the hook and kind of reel you in slowly, and being naive, I think, and somewhat young in the industry still, I just agreed to serve initially. I believe it was just as a board member. And so I said yes. And the next thing you know, I was asked to be a vice chair on the executive committee, and felt like an honor. But again, I just really? Do they know what they're doing here? Do they know who I am? Felt like a little bit of imposter syndrome being on that again, because up until that point, I just considered myself a student of For Life, learning the For Life operations, the For Life business, everything that we were doing here in our company. But then as I began to serve in those roles as the DSA, I had to become more of a student of the channel of direct selling. And it started to become more apparent that I could likely be asked to be the chairperson of the association. So at that point, I really started to think, is this what I want to do? Is this what For Life wants? Is this what the owner of For Life wants of me?
Sure.
Knowing it would be a time commitment, knowing it would put us more squarely in the spotlight, and kind of just, again, questioning, do they know what they're doing at the association? Perhaps asking me to serve in this role. So there was trepidation, or I would say hesitation, just in counseling with the owner for Life, David Lisenby. But in the end, that was what I guess gave me the confidence and made me agree to, as you said, Umar, to take the position, was the confidence that I was getting from David Lisenby, the owner of For Life, from Kevin Guest, the current chair at the time, and Joe and Adolfo, the president, CEO, and executive vice president there at the DSA, all of them, giving me this confidence. I thought, okay, I can do this. I can serve in this role. It felt like the right thing to do from a civic duty, if you will, kind of standpoint for the industry. So here I am serving as the chair.
I, for one, will say we're thankful you said yes. There's been a lot of change in our space. I know we'll talk about some frameworks today. I'm excited it's a breath of fresh air, and I'm excited to see how the DSA helps and supports member companies and the industry as a whole, even the ones who, may have said, is the DSA even relevant to me anymore? I hear that, times and time again. And so to have you there, I'm excited to see what that all looks like. And I know that that's what a lot of the questions, people have today are about, and it'll be helpful for us to talk about it. Yeah.
Good.
Absolutely. Thank you for your great input and insight. It's been said that your goal is that, we increase our impact and influence as an industry in 2024. What frameworks do you believe we need to look at as leaders to execute on your vision?
As the chairman, being brand new, I was asked by the DSA staff to convey my vision for the association. What would it be? And, I took that seriously, as I think one should. What is my vision? And I think it's kind of presumptuous to say it's my vision, but being in that role, I have to take leadership on that. I was able to see what the past vision or visions have been of other past chairs just before me. Frankly, it felt like there were too many visions. It felt like there were too many focuses. And I felt it important, especially given what Ben just said about relevance and are we being clear about what our primary value is to association members? I decided that we needed a very focused, a very narrow vision, which is, as you alluded to, expanding our influence or gaining influence. That's the whole purpose of a trade association, frankly, is to be able to have influence and have a real impact where it's needed, when it's needed. And if an association, including the Direct Selling Association, is too scattered in that vision, then we won't be effective, especially in the things that are most important. Because over the years, the DSA has provided lots of value in different ways. And I would say there were what some refer to as the glory days of the DSA, and dozens and dozens, close to a couple hundred members of the association. Great meetings, great events, and a great feeling. And that has waned in recent years. And I think a lot of that has to do with value. And we ask ourselves those questions every day in our lives. Is this subscription that I'm paying for adding the value that I need in my life? Is this association worth the value, especially when times are tough, when we're looking at budgets and profitability? You look at everything. If you don't, you're irresponsible. And so this is a critical association for members of this channel, for direct selling companies, to protect the channel. Because to say that it's not under attack would just be naive. It'd be putting your head in the sand. And so the framework that I'm looking to use is to create the vision, a very clear vision for what it is this association stands for and what it does, what value it can create for you as a member, so that we can have more members, so that we can have more influence, so we can have more impact where it's needed, which honestly is in Washington, D.C., or in the halls of any legislative body where laws and regulations are enacted. That's where the battle is. That's where we need to be.
What I love about what Danny just said, gang, is for each of us who run organizations here, that same framework applies to your own business. You got to hear that. Danny said, well, what became the issue with the organization long-term with this wonderful heritage? Too many goals, too many objectives, too many visions spread narrowly. And when you're feeling squeezed as an executive, many of you are on the slide, maybe you had some amazing revenue in COVID and now it's cut in half or in 75%, or you're feeling like, what do I do? Hear the framework that Danny just shared. He said, what did we do? We narrowed our focus and we re-explained to our membership base of a clear message of here's the value we're going to provide in your life, so we could double down with our members. And that is a framework we can all apply to our own direct selling companies. Many of us who are here have subscription-based services, whether they're digital services or they're physical products inside of our space. We look for reoccurring revenue in our business models. And a lot of us can feel squeezed at times. And that same practice that Danny's taking DSA through comes from, his time at Arthur Andersen, his time running For Life, his time running these great organizations in the past. And that's something we can all learn from here in our own businesses. And so I want you to hear the message. That's why we always lean on frameworks in the DSEF. We're always talking about on the executive forum what I can apply to my own business inside of this frame. And have you gotten too many visions going on at the same time? Are your customers confused? Does the marketplace not even know why you exist because your story is just jumbled on jumbled on jumbled for your heritage?
Yeah.
This is a powerful place for Danny to share. So
yeah, we hope with that narrow focus, members or potential members will be able to say, okay, for this money, I'm getting this. And we need to be able to demonstrate that they are actually getting that protection, that they are getting influence, because most companies, including For Life, and we're a sizable company, we don't have a full-time government affairs person.
Sure.
Somebody living in DC or traveling back there or working to advocate specifically on our behalf. Some of the bigger companies do, but the association can and should be that arm for you. You can pay a fraction of the cost of a full-time government affairs employee to be a part of the DSA, to have influence, to have say as to what happens with your dues. And so that's why I think the focus needs to be narrowed so they can understand, well, here's the primary value of what's happening here. I can't afford a full-time employee, but I can afford to be a member of the DSA, be in the know, and be able to give my opinion as to what I think we should do.
Wow, that's great. Thank you, Danny, for such a great insight. What pitfalls do we need to look out for in 2024 from your vision?
The pitfalls, again, are just getting scattered or getting lost and away from that narrow focus. Because again, there's other things that I found we were just probably talking too much about that didn't feel like the primary purpose. And that happens in our businesses as well. It's maybe something interesting or dramatic or exciting, but if it takes your focus off the primary objective, then it's a detriment to the purpose of what you're doing and your ultimate success as an organization. And so if we get moving along and we get distracted with, oh, well, we got to have, some networking events, or we got to go do some other meetings because just that's what we've always done, that can take time away from the most important things. So, there's good, there's better, and there's best. And if we get off of what is best, then we still might be doing good things, but we're not maximizing our strengths and what we are supposed to be doing as an organization. So those are some of the pitfalls. Not being able to convey clearly to membership and potential membership what it is we're doing and how we're being effective. That's a pitfall. You could be doing great things, but if it's not understood by your constituency, by your employees, by your field, then a lot of it's wasted, because the perception is the reality. If the perception is that the DSA is still not protecting me, it's still not doing what I need it to do, then we have still lost the game despite being effective. So that's a major pitfall as well, not conveying. I'm an advocate of, nobody likes to toot their own horn or pat themselves on the back, but it can be critical to come in and say to your boss, hey, look, here's what we accomplished. This is what we did. Because me sitting in this role as CEO or chairman, you don't always know all the good things that are happening. Sometimes you have to communicate, here are the good things that are happening. Here's what we said. Here's how we responded to the FTC. Here's what we've done to impact revenue in the field, or whatever it is for your organization. You have to kind of toot your own horn sometimes and communicate what's happening to keep that momentum, to keep that vision, people locked in on that vision that you put forth.
Yeah. I was looking at just the next question the forum had. As Omar asked this next one, it's even about applying that to your own business. I think that what you're talking about and how you're leading at the DSA in this framework to over communicate and to lead the conversation, I see us all doing that, even or needing to do that at our direct selling companies. Like, it's a powerful reminder. So let's go there, because that's a perfect segue. So Omar, this came right from the forum. Go ahead. That's good.
As CEO of For Life, how have you implemented the same frameworks you've shared with us today, and how has that impacted your business?
It's scarily similar. You put that vision out there at the highest level, You have to tell your organization and your field, what is you're doing? What is our purpose? What are we trying to accomplish at the highest level? And it needs to be something that's meaningful to them. And then underneath that vision, you can set goals or objectives, and you empower your organization to come up with ideas and plans with some, I think, depending on the maturity of your organization, you might need to give some framework or some guidance and steering in terms of what should you be shooting for? What should your targets look like? Or what should you be trying to achieve? So you have that vision over top of everything, and then your objectives or your targets, your goals underneath that vision should ultimately help you achieve the vision. And so with that in mind, your organization eventually, depending again on the maturity of that organization, should all be understanding what the vision is in their day-to-day tasks, regardless of what their role is. Every time they're doing something, they need to ask themselves, am I completing the vision? Am I doing something to gain influence? Am I doing something to hit this revenue target or this profitability target, or to keep an extreme focus on our hero product? Whatever it is you've laid out as a leader of an organization, that needs to be understood by that full organization. And that happens by setting goals, by setting objectives, and having key measures that indicate to you, are you hitting the objectives? Are you coming close to them? Are you hitting the target? Are you exceeding the target? And then, of course, an incentive plan that helps reinforce that. Because at the end of all this, we're in business to make a profit. We come to work to make money. We have families to feed. We have goals of our own. So you tie all those things together, everything from vision down to my daily tasks, responsibilities, that in the end will equal my success. You can get some great momentum. You can make some great strides, and you will accomplish something that you set out to accomplish, because you're measuring to it. Anything that you measure, you tend to get better towards meeting that objective. So that's how what we're doing in the DSA translates into what we're doing here at For Life as well.
Wonderful.
I love that picture. And, and one of the things I've seen is we've had a couple different sessions here on the executives forums about change management or change leadership and these words, of implementing change. And I have found, just as Danny's sharing, that we under communicate more than at times. And we think when we're moving things, there's a challenge to think that if we just announce it at convention, this behavior is going to change. Or if we just announce it here, this behavior is going to, move in our business. And it's not one thing. The ecosystem is everything. And so I have found, as you work to navigate your visions, just as Danny's sharing, and you narrow your focus and you have that message, that you have to bring that through each of the experiences and each of the touches that your field members have with you. So if there's a weekly training event, if there's a update that comes out from the CEO on rank ups and everything else once a week in your app, or whatever those touch points are that each of you have, right, inside your world of your weekly communication strategy, you want to bring that in. So if there's a 90-day run, that Danny's doing for a promotion for a bunch of people, right? When he does his updates on For Life's app, each Monday, he's going to have a little thing in there about, as a part of our 90-day run, here's our new rank breakers, and this is what they've done. And they're going to align the communication for the main objective inside of the space. And it can get to the place in your organization where there's just so much going on of different visions that the actual track to run on can get lost. And so the encouragement today is to take a moment to self-assess and to come back and say, what is adding value? What is moving the needle in my community? And what isn't? So what can I do less of so that I can do more of what matters? It's a really good
more
thought.
of what matters, Ben. I want to just build on that statement. More of what matters, because there's so many good ideas. There's lots of good ideas. They spring up from everywhere, and the tendency is to want to implement all those ideas as they come up. We have to remember, as leaders of large organizations, whether you've got thousands in the field, tens of thousands, or hundreds of thousands, this is a herd. And to move the direction of a herd, it takes time. And it takes a lot of communication, a lot of direction. And one of the mistakes we make as leaders of organizations is we're thinking on these things so often, and maybe having so many conversations internally or at corporate or just amongst the executives. We make the false assumption that hey, everybody understands these ideas and these directions as well as we do. We've been
Yeah, they're
talking about it
yeah,
for
they're up to
months.
speed like us. We've been talking every day. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
don't they know we've been talking about this ad
Yeah.
nauseum? But you need to remember that they haven't been a part of these conversations. They need to hear these things multiple times, and to the point where it feels like you've been saying it so much that you're tired of hearing yourself say it. Is probably still not enough. But
Yeah. Yeah.
you need to pick the messages that matter most. You need to make the changes that have the most impact, and you need to sacrifice and say these other changes, these other messages that are also good. They're not the best messages. They're not the most important things.
And it's also through your different mediums too. So I'll share a note. There's two. We had Kylie from Pampered Chef on the show, touched on this when they launched their table platform, and then Danielle Brown, when she launched new platforms at Tastefully Simple years ago, did the same thing. And what I love about just some of these ladies who've spoken on our show, right, and have done some of the stuff. Danielle later went on to run Young Living's sales teams, right? So there's just some amazing executives, these people, and they didn't just announce their direction and thing at convention. They didn't just do it in the weekly training calls. One thing I like about both Danielle and Kylie's stories is they literally did over 50 one-on-ones. So as a sales director focus, and this is just Danny used to be CMO, so you'll get this, right? Is like they did the work of individual one-on-one meetings with leaders on Zoom or in person, 50 plus one-on-ones, both of them, to make those implementations and change management go well. And we had Chris Adams from Princess House speaking earlier on the show. So as COO with some of their change, and what you'll hear from some of these teams that are making it happen on the change management side and are making vision cleared up on the change management side and doing this stuff, right? They're going all the way into the communication, just like Danny said, to where it way feels like old news to you as an executive. If you're out here running your squad, you feel like you have said this story way too many times, and yet it still hasn't clicked yet for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Use the word heard, right, in your squad or whatever you want to call your team of these independent volunteers. And I always liken it to even think of a church or whatever your faith-based community is. You think of this is a volunteer army. We use that analogy many times on the show. But like if you wanted the behavior to change at your volunteers at your church, right, you wouldn't expect to just say something for 5 minutes in the announcement section on Sunday morning, right? You would send it out in the email newsletter. You might host a training lunch. You might do all sorts of things to get everyone on the same page of what's new. And just know that, like, if you go back to some of the previous episodes we could put in the show notes, right? The people who have been successful with narrowing the focus not only announced it at convention, not only did it in the weekly training, but they then signed up for the 50 one-on-ones, or sometimes it's 100 one-on-ones that needed to happen. Yeah, I mean, Danny, I was smiling talking about this because it is it's like, do you have to go to one-on-ones? It's like, yeah, who's ranked 7 and above in your organization? Yeah, you need to go one-on-one with each of them to get the narrow focus. Like we see that all the time.
That dedication,
Yeah.
that's amazing. That's a great example of the type of executive or person that you want on your team. You need to hire that type of person.
Yes.
Because in my role and in all of our roles, we can't be doing everything. We need somebody like that you can rely on, that is passionate about what they're doing, dedicated enough to where, because that is exhausting. Just thinking about those. That's why I'm smiling. Like 50 one-on-ones. That's rough. I've been through that exercise before.
Yeah.
And even if you're just doing that like on a quarterly basis, you're just like, whew, here we go again. But
totally,
the
Danny.
effectiveness of it is meaningful.
It is because these are relationships. We have to remember at the end of the day, we're not selling to Tesla robots. These are people. Okay. These are people in our business. Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
I
I've learned, Ben, over the years that it can just be that one meaningful interaction that you have with a leader in the field or with an executive on your team or an employee that you pass in the hall. That is often enough to get them on your team and to create something that next time you see them and forevermore, they're with you. You can tell that you guys are on the same team together.
Yeah.
And it doesn't require a ton of effort, but it does take meaningful, sincere, genuine connection.
trust deposits. One thing we say in the culture of our company all the time that we run is that there's no neutral exchange. It's a framework we teach to all of our staff. We say that there's no such thing as a neutral exchange. Like even Danny and I being together on this podcast today, you either feel better about each other or you feel worse about each other. Every time you touch a human, right? There's no neutral. You never feel the same. Oh, I feel the same about Danny after interacting with him today. No, you either like, I trust that guy more or I trust that guy less. Like there's always an up or down in when you touch a human. And when you do these one-on-ones, it gives you those opportunities to make trust deposits, right, in these people's lives, because you're impacting them with like, oh yeah, I mattered enough to this very important person to spend some time with me, even if it was 15 minutes, and it made all the difference in the world. And so, I mean, we see this again and again. We're seeing cultures of companies that even the ones who did really well in, we've had a couple different speakers on from companies that quadrupled, or 5 times grew in COVID, who are like, how do we keep some of these people who enrolled that have fallen off? Like that's been many people have spoken on our show, talked about, once someone hits rank 3 for the first time, getting them out to the corporate offices and hosting events or things like that, that we've seen a lot more of making moments for these small touches that make all the difference in the world.
I have a choice in my role. I can keep a refrigerator in here and just get drinks out of the fridge, or I can stand up and walk a couple 100 feet down to the break room, grab some Pebble Ice, and I guarantee you I'm going to be stopped by or talked to 3 or 4 employees every time. And I could say, you know what, my time's too valuable to do that, but it's not. In the end, it's about people. It's about these relationships. And I'm not always going to be the CEO of For Life or the chairman of the DSA, but I hope that afterwards I'm somebody who made a positive impact on somebody's lives. And the exchange, like you said, it's good for both of us. Both people going away from a good positive interaction, that's invigorating. That makes your day worth living. So thanks for those thoughts, Ben. I love that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's good.
Come down to last questions, Danny. For busy executives who feel overwhelmed today, if you could leave them with one thought from our time together today, what would that be?
Steve Jobs said about never hiring people who know less about their jobs than we do. In other words, I think I alluded to this earlier. I can't be doing everyone's job. I'm not a micromanager, have no interest in doing that or being that. In fact, I take great pride in and energized by knowing my team is capable of doing their jobs with excellence better than I can do it, and in trusting that I can roll into a meeting, I can get up on stage knowing that everything's going to work the way it's supposed to, and having that balance in life in a very what could otherwise be a super stressful role is critical to longevity, is critical to keeping momentum up, to keeping a hopeful attitude, a kind attitude, a grateful attitude. So surround yourself with capable and good people, and you will look forward to coming into work every day. You will look forward to your job, and that makes a big difference in life. That's my advice.
That's absolutely amazing. Thank you. I agree to that. Amen.
And Danny, thank you so much for the time today. I love your vision on how you steward the role. I know our family picks a family theme every year, and we got stuck on the word stewardship a few years ago, and like we've been unable to drop it because I love your perspective of, hey, you say I'm not going to be chairman forever of the DSA, I'm not going to be CEO for life forever, and seeing life as a season that you're entrusted with to just steward your best is a powerful reminder. I think a lot of us get our identities caught up in what we deserve in life, and then we miss our ability to serve at our highest level. And that's something that I've really worked hard to take to heart and share with others, is seeing all of your relationships with the people around you, your relationship with your kids, your relationship with your spouse, your relationship at work, as something you're stewarding, not something you own or you're owed, but something you're stewarding in the season. You're being entrusted with it in this time, which is powerful. And I love just hearing how you shared that. It was a total treat to have you on today. For those of you that are listening to the podcast, whether you're on YouTube or you're joining us on Spotify today, and you're like, how do I submit questions and topics? How in the world do I participate in the forum? The Direct Selling Executives Forum is free. You go to directsellingexecutivesforum.com. We'll take you to the LinkedIn group. It's a group on LinkedIn. It's where most people contribute. And all you do is click to apply to join for free. And within that forum, you can submit additional questions. And we have been so blessed to have just amazing peers of you in the space hop on these sessions and unpack your questions into the frameworks that they use in their own life, and are always grateful just to be here to share what's really going on inside of the space as the market changes, as it will continue to. Danny, thank you so much for just your leadership, both at 4Life and at the DSA. I'm very excited to see how the rest of your term will turn out. We're cheering for you. If we had T-shirts, we'd be Danny Lee fans. We would have the shirt here today. And Omar and I are from all of our work with our clients in the space. We just want to see the space win at the end of the day. That's what we want to keep creating hope for individuals and families around the world with direct selling as a vehicle that allows them to level up in their own lives and realize their potential. And so very excited.
As do I. Thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure being with you both. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you soon. Bye for now, gang.
If you haven't yet joined the DSEF group on LinkedIn, go to directSellingExecutiveForum.com or go on LinkedIn and search for Direct Selling Executive Forum to apply. The group is free and is an invite-only community of direct selling executives by direct selling executives.